Broadcasters from across the state of Missouri traveled to Lake Ozark on Saturday, June the 4th for the annual Missouri Broadcasters Association Award Ceremony and Banquet. This year was a special banquet for both the MBA and the Ozark Radio Network, as it was the first year for inductions to the Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Ozark Radio Network founder Bob Neathery was one of 5 inducted.
Robert Neathery's path to radio began in 1911 when his stepfather traded a rice farm in Louisiana for a telephone company in West Plains. Working at the phone company gave him an opportunity to learn about electronics and an early appreciation of communications. One of his first jobs was changing fuses in the equipment. At that time, whenever a fire alarm sounded, everyone would get on the phone to find out about the fire. This would create an overload at the telephone office, which would blow the fuses. If this happened during the school day, the teachers would let him out of class to go to the phone company to get the phones working again. After graduating from high school, he attended the University of Missouri on a work-study arrangement. He would have 1 semester of study, followed by 1 semester of work. His work semester was with a radio manufacturer in New York, Stromberg Carlson. However, with the onset of the Depression, Stromberg Carlson could no longer afford to continue the arrangement. So Mr. Neathery returned to West Plains and opened his own radio shop, where he sold and repaired radios. Ultimately, he expanded his business to include washing machines and refrigerators. This continued until the start of World War II, when shortages made it difficult to stock the store. So after selling half interest in the shop, he took a job with Emerson Electric designing the electronic circuits for the gun turrets for B-24 bombers. After the war, the radio and appliance business continued to suffer, so he went to work for a company that sold relays and switches. One of his accounts was the Gates Radio Company.
I was talking to their chief engineer, Fred Grimwood. Maybe you knew him. And I told him I'd always wanted a radio station, and everybody told me I couldn't do it. Well, he says, you're looking at the guy that does that.
After thinking about it for a day, Mr. Neathery decided to apply for the license, which was granted in less than 2 months. KWPM AM went on the air July 15, 1947.
People told me they'd probably give me about 6 months to go broke, but I kept doing it, and 52 years later, we're still here.
He studied other stations to see what was working and what wasn't. He brought other talented people into his operation and learned from them. But most importantly, he studied his community to see what people wanted, and then developed new services that gave people what they wanted. At first, KWPM began its broadcasting day at 6 a.m. However, Mr. Neathery's drive to the station took him past a cafe. He noted that there were always people inside having breakfast, which meant that they were getting up well before the station went on the air. So he started signing on at 5 a.m. It was always his belief that his radio station should be more than just a radio station. It should be a unifying factor and focal point for the community. But Robert Neathery's sense of community extended beyond West Plains. In February of 1948, he wrote a letter to several other pioneer radio operators and asked them to join him in Kansas City for the purpose of establishing an association to serve broadcasters in Missouri. As a result, on March 11, 1948, the Missouri Broadcasters Association was founded. Robert Neathery never missed an annual convention and is a recipient of the MBA's Distinguished Broadcaster Award. Mr. Neathery began FM operations in 1953. This was at a time when most people were running away from FM. But as was his usual practice, his strong sense of community service, not economics, was the driving force behind his decision. The radio broadcast of Cardinal baseball was a big event for people in the area.
When baseball was on, you'd find a bunch of cars. They'd gather at some kind of a crossroads or a vacant lot or filling station or something. And you'd find 10, 12 cars in every one of those places. All of them came in just to get that ball game.
As he later said, "This worried me. I felt we needed to take care of those people somehow. FM, which carries better, was the answer." Robert Neathery always believed and practiced that you take care of your local community first, and if you do that well, the money will take care of itself. Mr. Neathery ultimately expanded to own stations in a number of Missouri communities. In addition to West Plains, he owned and operated stations in Thayer, Willow Springs, Fredericktown, Jackson, Columbia, Bolivar, Mammoth Spring, and Branson. He passed away in September of 2003. But in more ways than most people in broadcasting will ever know, he is still with us today.
The Ozark Radio Network was also nominated for 3 awards. Top honors went to KWPM Program Director Jerry Elam in the Documentary Public Affairs category for his discussion with Don Warden, current manager of Dolly Parton and former KWPM employee. Jerry talked about the win and what it means to him to win on such a prestigious night.
Oh, that was a great feeling. It was really special because it happened on the same night that my daughter got a scholarship, and to be able to kind of share the stage with her was the most special, I think, of all, and my wife to be there too. That was really special. I mean, the whole night it just worked out, more than I could ever have hoped for. But yes, he was such a great influence on me and everyone that has ever worked around him, and that was such a great tribute that they did to him. And then on top of that, to see KWPM, whomever it might have been, and of course we did have 2 others that also were honored in this station, or this group of stations that he sprang up from KWPM. So that it was just more icing on the cake. It really was.
KKDY afternoon host Brett Stevens won Certificate of Merit, or second place, in the category of Commercial Announcement, and News Director Ed Button, also received a Certificate of Merit in the Promotions category. Ozark Radio Network CEO and President Tom Marhefka, whose wife is the granddaughter of Bob Neathery, said it's a continuation of a legacy that Neathery started so many years ago.
Well, our family's delighted. We're carrying on a legacy in radio here with Papa Bob, and after 65 years, we're still excited to be in radio, following all the direction he gave us when we were young and we were coming up in the business.
I mean, it's only one of 5 in Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame, so I'd say we're honored to be one of the first 5 to get into the class, and I'd say that from our end, it's a big legacy to uphold. And they started something really great in Missouri, and we're going to try to follow through with that and give people great radio.
Ed Button, Ozark Radio News.